That was the scene in Winnipeg outside the town hall where Prime Minister Trudeau is speaking. When he formed government, Trudeau called for a renewed nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous peoples. But many in those communities say they're seeing a frustrating and sometimes tragic disconnect between those words and actions. One prominent chief delivered that message this week at a town hall in Saskatoon. He asked Trudeau why his people are still waiting to see money that they had been promised. The Prime Minister acknowledged their frustration, but then he said this.
You know, I've spoken with a number of chiefs who said, yeah, we need a youth center. You want to talk about young people? We need a youth center in our community. Okay, well, what do you want in that youth center? Well, you know, we need TVs and lounges and sofas so they can hang around. And when a chief says that to me, I pretty much know they haven't actually talked to their young people. Because most of the young people I've talked to are asking for a place to store their canoes and paddles so they can connect back out on the land, and a place with internet access so they can do their homework in a meaningful way, because their homes are often too crowded and they need a place to work and study.
We're back with round 3 of the Sunday Scrum. Susan Riley, John Ibbotson, and Katie O'Malley all in Ottawa this morning. Susan, your reaction to that comment?
It seems naive, to be kind, and it seems, I don't doubt that some young Native people probably said that to Justin Trudeau, and he's relaying that, but I don't think it's based on a very wide sample. My guess would be there'd be probably demands for like basketball courts and hockey rinks, the same thing, same kind of things that maybe a curling rink, the same kind of things that young people in other remote communities might want, but I don't know. That's also just based on impressions. He also seems to be implying that the chiefs really don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. That might be true in some cases. I'm not, prepared to rule that out of hand. But it was an awkward, and it made him sound very ill-informed, actually, for a prime minister.
John, what do you think he was trying to say there?
Yeah, he was being very inartful, as he sometimes is. But hey, come on, he spent a whole week on the road. You're going to misspeak sometimes. But I think he spoke, in fact, if he had done it better, to a larger truth. We have a rash of teenage suicides on reserve. The federal government is completely responsible for those suicides. It created the reserve system in the first place. It has mismanaged, abused, underfunded, and generally, run badly the system from Confederation until yesterday. And it has to take responsibility for that. Provincial governments have to take responsibility. They're responsible for healthcare and education and social services, and they should be stepping up to the plate rather than saying it's not our jurisdiction. And the chiefs bear responsibility. It's their reserves, their lands. What are they sacrificing in order to focus on nothing but improving the quality of life of the children on reserve? Are they just standing and demanding more money? Are they waving signs? Are they calling reporters in Ottawa and saying situation is dire? Or are they actually doing what must be done? And parents have to assume responsibility. Children are committing suicide. That is a failure of parenting as much as anything else. You cannot absolve any one order or level of caregiving from what is happening.
Katie, what do you make of that comment and what Justin Trudeau might have been getting at there?
Well, I agree with both John and Susan that it probably could have been phrased in a less sort of high-handed way, but the underlying message that I think he might have been trying to put forward is probably one worth taking into consideration, which is First Nations are not a monolith. First Nations communities are not a monolith. First Nations chiefs aren't a monolith. First Nations youth aren't a monolith, which means I absolutely believe that some young people have probably told Justin Trudeau, hey, we actually kind of want to get back to nature and we don't want to just lie around on couches watching TV. We'd love to have some place to put our canoes. I can absolutely imagine someone saying that. That doesn't mean that there might be another community where they say, yeah, we wish we had a community center with couches and TVs so we could work on our homework, so we could get together and have a place to sort of hang out and communicate. That doesn't make either of those sort of proposals or those ideas wrong, and it doesn't mean that anyone's lying about what it is that they think or they hear their youth want. What it means is with a nation-to-nation government, you can't necessarily assume that every nation that you speak with is going to have the same priorities, and even that anyone within that nation or community is going to have it. So yeah, there's always going to be some people that are going to be unhappy with the decisions that are made. The challenge for the government is to try to address as many of those concerns as possible and look like they're addressing them and look like they're open to communication from all sides, not just the chiefs, not just the youth, everyone. And I think that that's really what the government's got to try to make clear in the weeks, months, years ahead, is that it is listening. It may not always agree. It may not always be able to provide exactly what is being requested, but that it is taking all of those different perspectives into account.
One of the foci of the federal government is to help Indigenous people find new respect, new connections to their historical past. And maybe that's what Justin Trudeau was getting at with the canoes and paddles comment. I found the chief comment interesting because I wondered if there was something there, if there's some friction between him and some of the chiefs over various points of the Indigenous file, of whether there's some anger on his part or frustration that he's trying to get out.
Well, sure, there are more than 600 First Nations across the country, and you have a plethora of conditions. In some, especially those that are closer to cities in the south, conditions aren't that much different from, say, the nearest neighboring municipality. You also have chiefs. There's a generational split here as well. If you talk to them at gatherings, between some of the older chiefs, it's all about grievance, it's all about truth and reconciliation, it's all about claims. And some of the younger chiefs say, no, we've got to get health care, we've got to get running water, we've got to get education onto this reserve. Yeah, again, we're the head of government for a nation. Our first job is to look after our children and to get them the services and the supports that they need. So there are tensions among the chiefs themselves. We saw it over the First Nations Education Act, which was a great act to create provincial and regional First Nations run school boards. Most of the chiefs were in support of it, but a sufficient minority opposed it that the Conservatives had to withdraw the act, and it led to Sean Atleo having to step down as leader of the AFN.